We start. So welcome everyone. And is there anything there's to say in advance, like about the picnic maybe that we had the awesome picnic at the Washoe State Park, and that there are I think three people won the honey tasting contest. I don't know who that was though.
We had three people, myself and was it Eric? I forget. And another person. We had three people. So yeah, I think Mark, you took pictures. So Mark has loaded the pictures from the picnic on our G Drive. So I'm going to be posting those, or Mark will post those to the Facebook page, and we can look at those.
I think the other guy was Dan Seamus,
Yeah.
a new member.
Oh, yes. It was. He was sitting next to me. Young guy.
Yeah.
They're all young for you.
Well, yeah, well, no comment.
Me too.
There you
Well,
go. I posted
bees
the
don't care.
shared the picture of the winners there.
There we go.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
I'm so short.
Should have had you stand on the wall.
That's right.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, the bees.
I think we all had a good time.
The bees don't care if you are short or young or old. So as long as you're doing the right thing, they won't care. And as far as I understood from the email, there are still somebody was missing a knife, and there was one knife left over. So whoever feels reminded by that,
Yeah.
maybe contact the club.
you can contact me. I had brought out what I thought was a bread knife, which I can't find. And I ended up with a Chicago Cutlery large chef's knife, which I don't think is mine. So I've got those. So I'll just hang on to the Chicago one. If I don't get mine back, that's no big deal. I did not bring my good knives out there. The other thing about the picnic is I did a kind of a little bit of a head count. And I've had about between 40 to 45 people that were there. So I think that was a good show for us.
Yes, it had a good turnout. So Pam, if you don't hear back from anyone, you just use the Chicago cutlery knife for cutting your bread, if you don't mind.
Okay. I'll use it on the baklava.
Yes. That was amazing, by the way, like always.
Well, I figure I did a whole roaster pan and a cake pan. I think next time I'm going to do 2 roaster pans because they're bigger, because there was nothing left.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I do have a question about the picnic. I had a little bit too much of my own sauce, and I can't remember. There was a gentleman that brought hot sauce that he had made himself. Does anybody remember his name? Okay.
I didn't even know you brought the hot sauce. I would have tried it.
Oh, he did, and he gave me a bottle of it, and absolutely delicious. I just can't remember his name.
I remember him giving it to you, but I don't remember a name either. I think he said it, but slipped by me.
Maybe I'll see him at the next in-person meeting we have.
Yeah.
Yes, about that, Pam, is there any news from the Sparks Library?
Okay, all of the libraries in Washoe County now are open. Some have their original hours. As far as the meeting rooms go, since this was our last meeting, I didn't even check to see if the Sparks Library meeting room was open. I will keep in contact with them through, till the beginning of this next year. And if they're open, then I'll get the reservations for the March through October meetings for us.
Yes, great, thank you.
We have in the past had so many people at the in-person ones, we were almost to capacity there or close to being over. So I'm kind of feeling we're still okay with that room. Does anybody have any input on that?
I think as long as we continue doing so the people that don't want to make that drive or be there can do that, I think that'll help keep us well within the numbers that we're supposed to be. Plus, I think our membership has suffered a little bit over the last year and a half.
Yeah, I really would like to see the Zoom meetings continue because like you said, there's probably people that don't want to come out to yet, even maybe come next spring. And for some people, it's a lot easier if you're, if you got jobs and to be able to get to some place. So I'm in favor of doing Zoom also.
So if we're going to
Yes.
continue the Zoom meetings, we may want to look at buying some additional technology. One thing I noticed at the library, we like to walk around and talk. If we get away from our laptops too far, we won't have microphone pickups. So there's ways we can do. Bluetooth mics are the types of mics that hook up to it that allow it for good audio reception for those in the meeting, and maybe a little camera to set up too, so it's better picture quality.
I think that's a good idea. And that stuff's not terribly expensive.
No, I mean, a whole setup like that might be a couple $100s.
Yeah.
Do we have
I'm
a
in
club
favor.
laptop or?
The club actually has a very nice laptop, and I don't know why Jim was afraid to use it. But, but they do have a good laptop.
If it's a good laptop, then we won't worry about that technology right now.
Yeah, it was the best we could get for around $800 2 years ago. So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, if you'd have to pursue that, I'm in favor of it.
I'm certain that laptop can more than handle it. It's newer than my computer, and my computer does just fine. So
Yeah, we're not doing anything fancy with it, so yeah, a couple years old shouldn't be a problem.
just getting Jim to bring it. I don't know where it's at.
Go check your garage.
Okay, well, we'll try to be on top of that. Randy, do we have enough money to buy the equipment?
Yeah, we can buy several of those.
Yeah, like I said, camera and microphone and stuff
Okay.
might be at most $200.
Mark, do you want to be in charge of that? And then doesn't Randy would normally just give him a receipt and Randy would write you a check?
Yeah.
Yes,
I think that's a good idea.
as long as the vice president okays it, we're okay.
Yes, just blame me. Take full responsibility. Yeah, that's great because I think that next year might just be also a hybrid where some people maybe hopefully will come in person, but a lot of people will join over Zoom, and we don't know how long that will go next year. So I think that's a very good idea. And maybe we could put that then in the next newsletter, either next spring or one in winter. I'll talk to Jim about that, where we can already announce that.
In talking about newsletters, are we pursuing doing one on a monthly basis until we actually do an in-person and have a newsletter with that?
Well, I know that Jim suggested that last year, I think, and didn't he send a few out in winter? But honestly, there's not much going on in winter. We could maybe send out one around the end of the year and then start again in March, April.
It might be behoove us to send out a newsletter a little before the March meeting for those that are new in regards to setting their hives up and checking them and all that kind of stuff that you need to do before you actually get your packages and stuff. So maybe, you know, I can always talk to Jim about newsletters, but that might be an idea.
Okay.
Yeah, one in December would probably be good. Because that's when you're looking to buy a lot of your packages if you're ordering from California or wherever.
Yeah, and also if you're going through your equipment, you're gonna wanna, you know, look at your equipment and talk about what maybe some of the newer beekeepers might want to have extras on hand if they did really well this last year.
Then also it's a good time to remind people to do an oxalic acid treatment.
Yeah.
Okay. We will get out a newsletter in December and maybe one in February.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Anybody have any questions about what they should be doing this time of year? Get their bees ready for winter, stuff like that. I mean, we have such an audience today. It's,
I was wondering if anybody else was using BT for wax moth suppression.
BT, I'll have to look that up. I'm not familiar with that. Just
Oh,
like-
it's a bacterium, Bacillus thuringiensis. Instead of using moth crystals to keep the moths out of the stored frames, they have a new product on the market. I think it came out last year, actually, called Bacillus thuringiensis. It's a bacterium that you can spray on the frames before you put them in storage. And if the moth larvae hatch, they consume the bacteria that you sprayed on the frames, it kills them. And it's specific only to members of the Lepidoptera family that this bacteria affects. And I had really good experience with it last year, and I'm using it again this year. I was just wondering if anybody else was.
Now that you mention it, I remember a gentleman on one of the YouTube channels I watch was testing it out this last year, and he's going to do it again this year for treatment. Now that you mention it, but I have no experience with it. So, but let us know how it goes, how it works out.
Ray, where did you purchase it at?
Man Lake,
Okay.
the see, I'm looking, it's called I'm looking at the label. I'm looking for the brand name of this. I'm sorry, my camera is not working, so I can't show you a picture of it, but it's a fluid, and you mix 3 ounces of it in a half a gallon of water and spray it on your frames before you put them in storage. I like it better than the wax, the moth crystals, because it's a natural, you know, it's biological and kind of a natural thing instead of poisonous moth crystals.
Yeah, so that is a good point, though. If you're not going to use something like that, if you are storing your frames, if you buy, I think I have to turn off my background just a second. Okay. So, see this, so backwards for you, isn't it? It's this paradichlor. Oh,
Yeah, paradichlorobenzene, that's the wax, that's the moth crystal.
yeah. So if you're going to be using a wax, or a moth treatment for your bees, you don't have to buy the paramoth one. That one I just happen to buy and have. So, but you can buy others from the store. You just have to make sure it's that, if you're going to use it, that is that paradioxamine product. And the reason is that if you use the one that starts with an N, you'll kill the bees. Because this, when you pull your frames out of storage, you just let them air out for a few days to a week and they're fine. But with that other one, that man, I really should have, I wasn't thinking about it, I should have got the name of it. But anyways, the main one that they use in mothballs that soaks into the wood and the wax and will linger for months. So your bees. So starts with an N. So the paradichlorobenzene, that's the one that you want if you're gonna use anything at all, or give that other one a try. That
Yeah, that's the stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I posted a link and here's a picture of it that I pulled up from Man Lake. Yeah, from Man Lake, I just went to their website and did the wax moth, and it gave the one Stefan showed and then this one as well.
yeah. So Man Lake is really expensive with their stuff. So when I had ordered this paramoth, I ordered this paramoth last year, and because Man Lake was so on top of everything, I didn't get it until January. But I ended up going down to Lowe's and I got some for dollars as opposed to like the $20 they charge for the stupid thing. And so yeah, you don't have to use Man Lake's stuff. You just need to make sure that the chemicals are right. You don't want to kill your bees. But that other stuff seems pretty cool, Ray. I hope that works out. So.
What are the options for non-chemical storage?
So if you don't want to use any chemicals, you need to freeze frames, and then for 2 days will kill the larva, and then you can, as long as you store them in a way that wax moths can't get to them, or mice, they'll be good. If you have a chest freezer, I would recommend freezing the whole box and everything, and put it in a plastic bag, whole box and everything, and then just pull it out after it's frozen for 2 days, and then make sure it has a hard top and bottom so nothing can get in there, because mice will try to get in there and eat those also. Because, there's no mice in the desert.
Right. And on the really cold days and nights that we have, you can just set them outside and that'll freeze them too. We had another member who just did that in the wintertime, set them outside, and if there was any at that point, it kills them off. But you still have to watch out for the mice.
Right, so what I will do this year is I want to harvest more wax, and I will scrape all the frames down except for the newest, nicest wax frames. But I'm just thinking, by taking off all the wax, it's also pretty unlikely to get wax moths in there. And then I'll just store them outside and just let it freeze and thaw and freeze and thaw.
Yeah, if you pull the wax off, it's not going to be a problem. And they don't even really care for honeycomb wax. I mean, they will, but what they really want is they want that brood comb, that dark brood comb, and pollen. So if you've scraped them down to the foundation, there's nothing to worry about, except for mice, of course, because they'll gnaw on the wood.
Okay, great. So that is the storage of the frames and wax moth prevention. So do we want to talk about other winterization points like moisture control?
Yeah, I think we were talking earlier about moisture and the different methods that we normally suggest. I personally believe it's going to be a wet winter. And with that, of course, the bees are going to be susceptible to getting moisture in their hives and therefore causing weakness if your colonies are already weak, to try to survive being wet and cold. So controlling moisture, of course, is important. There are several ways. Emu talked about creating a spacers between the inner cover and the telescoping lid to create a little bit of more ventilation to pass through the top of the hive. There are other ways to do it using an excess super, lined with either wood chips and burlap to try to wick away that moisture from your hive. I personally use a thing called Vivaldi boards. That's sort of custom made board with ventilation slats on the front and the back that help also with the same purpose, wick away moisture. I don't think too many people here, we actually wrap our hives because the bees are pretty good at keeping themselves warm. Now, if you lived back east or further up north where the weather is very, very cold for longer periods of time, then perhaps wrapping might make sense. But for here, we have off and on extremes between hot and cold and not long periods of deep cold that the bees require to have their hives wrapped. Mostly, keeping the wind down, creating a windbreak, of course, maybe using bales of hay or creating some sort of shelter around your hives to minimize that exposure. So yeah, I think keeping the hive warm and dry is primary. So keeping it off the floor, reducing the entrances, make sure your screen bottoms are all nice and tight, and making sure if there's any rain or snow that's melting, that your hives may be tilted back a little bit so that the runoff doesn't, seep into the hive. So maybe a slight angle degree to keep the rate off of the hive. Any suggestions from any of our novice that
So
they're
with
trying to
my,
see?
I say with my hives, I don't have a good windbreak for them. So I
Mhm.
actually put a ratcheting strap around them. So that way this is out in the Red Rock area. So if the wind does happen to knock them over, the hive's still going to stay intact. They're just on their side now. So that's the one hopefully it won't fall over, but I have had that. But that'll help protect the hives in case it does. I've had some before that I was in Carson and they were out past Red Rock and it blew over. And it's like, I'm an hour and a half away. They're going to be dead by the time I get there in the middle of a snowstorm. So that's a
Yeah.
good way to protect. Just it's a security feature for them, I would say.
Yeah, good idea. Definitely. I did commission to have some Vivaldi boards made, so I have exactly 20. They're for the 8-frame size boxes only, though. So if anybody's interested in purchasing them from me, just reach out to me, let me know. And we can make arrangements to get those to you. So again, they're 8-frame Vivaldi boards with the inner screen feeding board as part of the box itself. I'm kind of see how they work out for people, and maybe next year we'll get some 10-frame ones built from the same gentleman that made these for me this year.
What I also think is a good moisture control in case you are still feeding your bees at this time of year, like with sugar water, try to get the water as concentrated as possible. So like 3 cups of sugar with 1 cup of hot water try to get that dissolved, or give them granulated sugar to avoid that extra moisture. And I was surprised by what was in the newsletter about how much moisture is created by the bees just eating up their honey in winter. So by feeding them with sugar water, it's really probably a good idea to reduce the water there too. Yeah.
So I use a makeshift Vivaldi board, not quite as fancy as Deborah's, but with just a extra super and a little vent box above it. And then I put a couple folded up burlap bags in there, and that seems to work really well for wicking the moisture out. Like Deborah said, I mean, I know a lot of people like to put bark dust in them or wood chips in them. I don't. I mean, obviously they're your hives. You do what you want to do, but to me that just seems like a lot of extra work. If you are feeding your bees, you're not going to have much longer time to feed them before they won't be able to condense down or to evaporate they won't be able to generate enough heat to evaporate the sugar water. So if you're going to be doing it, you want to get on it and try to be done within the next couple weeks for sure. Another thing is you can make those sugar bricks, and those work pretty good also for wicking moisture out. They just it's just sugar with a little apple cider vinegar to help keep any bacteria or mold from growing in it, and then just a little bit of water, just enough that it'll clump together. Put it in a little form, whatever you want, and then you put those in, and they absorb a lot of moisture. If you have them directly on top of the bees, I find that the bees on warm days will just throw it out of the hive, and then they're hungry in the middle or at the end of winter. If you're short on feeding and you need to feed them, another method that works really well is called mountain camp, where you pull off the inner cover, you set a piece of newspaper down, put a couple little slits in it, put a couple pounds of sugar right on top of it, on top of the frames. The bees will come up and they'll eat that sugar, and it also works well for collecting moisture out of the hive. Sugar is pretty good at that. So yeah, that's all I gotta say.
Stefan, this time of year and others too, what would you recommend? I mean, what would you think about an idea of moving a hive a couple of feet to get it more in the sun, what little sun we have in the winter, versus next to a fence where it's shaded? I think that'd be a good idea, but it involves taking a hive apart, moving it 2 boxes by 2 boxes over. And then, there's the propolis, they built that up. Now you're breaking it, and then you're upsetting the hive right here in this critical time, I guess. And I was just wondering if you thought that would be a good idea, just to get them as much sun as possible in the winter, instead of being possibly shaded.
So in my mind, moving a hive a couple feet is no big deal. And I wouldn't even have a problem breaking apart a hive as long as the daytime temperatures are going to be in the 50s or so. They're going to be able to seal that back up. With bringing the bees into a sunny spot in the summer, in the winter, what you are doing is, as that hive heats up, the bees want to go fly, and so they can consume more resources. And so a shady spot isn't necessarily a problem in the winter. So I have bees in the sun, I have bees in the shade. I don't worry about it one way or the other, but it's not, the bees can generate, as long as they have a strong number of bees, they can generate enough heat that they don't even have need to have that inner cover on, they can make it 90 degrees in their brood chamber. I mean, they are very very good at generating heat. So that's not, I mean, unless they're really small and you're worried about it, personally, I wouldn't worry about it myself, but it's your call, your beast.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Stefan, last month you said what you use for your own pollen patties. Would you repeat that again?
Yeah, so I will take however many pounds of it I'm making up. So I'll add in a bunch of pollen sub, just whatever is inexpensive at the time from Man Lake. Because I think that most of that stuff is just hype. You know, when they say, oh, this is super special, great for the magic of this particular time of year. But anyhow, so I just take however much I'm making up, a couple pounds, and then I put it in my mixer, and then I just start adding my honey. I wouldn't use anybody else's honey, but if you have honey, then I will add honey in there. I usually put a tablespoon or two of apple cider vinegar, and then I put in a couple tablespoons of olive oil to just try to keep it, one, from developing any mold or anything like that. And then that's what the vinegar is for. And then the olive oil is just to help try to keep it pliable.
Mm-hmm.
And then I put it in a bucket and I just throw it in the fridge. I have a fridge for all my experiments. And so it just sits out there in the fridge, and then I pull it out the day before I'm going to use it to get it up to room temperature, so I can put it on the hives that I'm going to put it on. So.
Yeah. Well, I bought the Man Lake winter pollen patties, and my bees never seem to like it, and it sure makes a mess on top of the hives, you know, scraping it off.
Yeah, I actually have. I've rarely had bees actually take down pollen. So like I have my big hives, I've given them pollen in the spring and the fall, and then I always end up just scraping it out and throwing it away.
Yeah.
But my little hives, they really climb onto that. They use that. But of course I'm only giving them, you know, a little bit at a time, you know, not pounds. And I know that a beehive can consume a pound of pollen in a day with no problem if they're in need of it. But I find that there's so much out, especially right now with all that rabbit brush, they just don't care for it. So, and in the springtime, there's a lot going on too. I haven't found them really care for it either. So. But of course, everybody's condition is different. You know, when you pull out those frames, you know, in the springtime, and there should be rooting up, and you pull out the frames, and then there's no pollen on any of the frames. You might want to give them some food.
Yeah, I had one of my hives this year. It was a small hive that I kept a patty on it almost all year. Just because they're small, I figured it's easy food source for them. They didn't even touch it until the summertime, really. I mean, I'd see nibbles here and there, and then I came back midsummer, and then all of a sudden it was gone. So it's like
doing that, Mark. That does remind me. I did put some on hive, or the hive that I had making me queen cells, and they took down probably like 2 pounds a week, and they took down a lot. And so, that was in the middle of the summer. So I wonder if maybe that's like, maybe I need to start doing that to have stronger brood for my fall, or stronger bee hives.
Yeah, when there's less food source out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one thing I liked about it, even with the wintertime stuff, is if it sits there all winter, it's not going to hurt them. As long as it's not growing mold, it's fine. So
if you use any feeder that relies on a vacuum, like a upturned bottle or anything like that, especially right now with the big temperature swings, if the hive's not strong enough, you might end up drowning them. So you might want to look at some sort of either inside feeder or top feeder that doesn't require the bees to keep on top of it. I drowned a nuke last year, trying to get, or early spring, I guess it was. I was trying to get it they had eaten all their food, and so I fed them a quart of sugar syrup in an upturned jar, and they took it down. And so I gave them another one, and then they drowned because they didn't. So, yeah, if you're going to leave feed on in the winter, either do dry feed or make sure that it's doesn't have the ability to drip on top of them. So.
Okay, did anybody else have questions about how to bring their bees through the winter?
I just have one quick question. How do you know when or if your bees need to be fed during the winter, if you're not really opening up the box to check on them?
Yeah, so I personally use a tilt method. I just walk up to the hive and lift the back of it. And if I can lift it pretty easily, then it needs to be fed.
Gerbil.
All your equipment together probably only weighs, 30 to 40 pounds. And so, and if that's a double deep with all the frames and cone built out. So if you're tilting it on, it should be pretty, that's really light. And so for me, if it takes quite a bit to lift it, then I feed. Although most of my hives this year, I've just dumped a full box of honey right on top of them, and I am not even going to worry about it because I know that they can't consume that much throughout the winter. In the springtime, they will. So they'll work their way up and into that box, but they won't hardly use any of it until probably late January, February, when they start brooding up and they're generating a lot of food and a lot of heat. They'll burn through all the pollen they have stored, and they'll burn through all that sugar. And so what happens when people's bees starve is they don't check them until April or May, and then they haven't looked at them at all. And at that point, they're either got too weak to be able to take advantage of the spring flow, or they, so they usually don't starve in January. They usually starve in, February and March when things are just starting.
And when is it okay to start putting sugar water back inside the inbox feeders?
Oh yeah, you could do that all winter long if you want, as long as it's dripping on top of the bees. But if the colony gets small, and if you don't have those little ladders in there, I have seen bees all huddle together inside that little box and then fill it full of sugar syrup and drown them all. I won't tell you how that happens, but it's not pretty. So you can just leave the feeder in all summer or all winter long, and you can keep it full. It will, unless you do what Emu says and have a really thick syrup in there, though, you do run the risk of it molding. So yeah.
What does it mean by putting an extra box of honey on top? Do you know what that means?
Somebody had a question. I didn't quite hear that.
Maybe it was transferring honey from one hive to another. Is that a good idea?
Yeah, I do that all the time. So especially if I have a hive that dies out in the wintertime, and I know that it was either, as long as it isn't one of the bad things, like a foul brood or something like that, when you inspect it, like if they just froze to death, got too small, froze to death, or if they starved because they ate all the food around them and couldn't move up to where the other food is, I put boxes on all the time. I just move them over, and I will usually just move the whole box. I don't bother. But I am fortunate that I have enough resources available to me to do that. So it can be difficult if you're, want to run a couple hives.
Yeah, I pull off a few boxes just a couple of weeks ago, and those will be just stored for emergencies should there be one. But all my bees, were pretty well weighted down with good stores. But just in case, you never know, or somebody else needs it, I'm able to be a resource to give them a few frames. But yeah, and if nobody needs it, then that's extra honey for me later on.
The other thing is when you pull that honey off, you can just store that whole super in your freezer. Storing in the fridge will cause it to crystallize, but freezing it won't. It'll just freeze, and then as soon as it comes to room temperature, you can put it right on the hive. It's not a problem at all. Won't be crystallized or anything.
I lately stored a box of honey that I had harvested in the garage, and then I had wax moths in there. So I will probably either harvest all the honey immediately, or should freeze it down. That's a good idea.
When I get wax moth in any of my honey, I just take the whole box and throw it back on the hive. I won't because it's so I don't think everybody can taste it, but there is a distinct taste that that wax moth puts out when they eat through the so I don't like that, so I throw it back on the hive and let them basically eat all that honey, because I'm not gonna mess with it. So if you haven't harvested your honey yet, your days are getting numbered.
Good luck.
It's going to be hard getting it out of the comb.
The extraction equipment has got 2 people in line for it, but otherwise it's ready if you want to attempt anything.
Well, good. Does anybody have more questions about harvesting the lost honey and bringing the bees through the winter?
I just want to say, if you're going to want to look at equipment, Man Lake always has a Black Friday and during Thanksgiving time. So that's the best time to really try to store up on your equipment. Get those bargains, get those deals for the new beekeepers or anybody looking to look forward to doing splits in the spring.
Oh, I wanted to ask, has anybody ever created these thin rolls of wax, these sheets of wax that you can roll into candles? Does anybody has experience with that?
I have not, but I have wanted to use those to make wax foundation, but they want like $3,000 for the rollers. So like a little bit out of my price range for a little foundation.
Okay, that answers my question. Well, I don't know. I don't want to be the bad guy here. Is there anything we want to talk about before winter break?
I'm kind of curious if anybody else is planning on attending the conference, American Beekeeping Federation conference in Las Vegas in January.
Yes,
I bought my ticket.
Yeah, I'm going. I am going. Yeah.
Good, good. Yeah, me too. I think a couple people from my organization are going.
Good, good. I'll be driving because I have to take my scooter with me, but it should be a good trip. The only thing that'll stop me is weather.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So just Pam is the only one that's going from NNBA?
No, I'm going to, Ray.
Are you going to, Deborah? Good.
Yeah.
Would you be interested in maybe sharing what you've learned then in spring with us?
Oh, sure, you bet.
Yeah, same here.
Good.
If, I'm wondering if we should put in the newsletter that some of us are going, if there's anybody that has specific wants on the different, not venues, but different, I guess, symposiums that are going on, because a lot of times they're concurrent ones. And someone may have an interest in something, you know, maybe one of us could attend that to bring information back. I don't know, I can talk to Jim about that.
Every year they have a big kids and bees event where they invite like 300 to 500 kids from the area, school children, to come, and they set up different areas like bees in science and bees in agriculture and bees around the world, and have all these different displays. It's a really fun event, but they always look for some volunteers to help with that event too. So I'm volunteering this year to help out with that one.
They
Yeah.
did that, they did that at the conference that they had here about, what it was about 4 years ago out of Grand Sierra.
Yeah.
And I went and observed some of that stuff. So I think that would be a good idea, even for myself, to maybe volunteer now that I'll be down there.
Pam, I'll forward you the information if you're interested. They are looking for volunteers to help out with that.
Yes, I would like that. If you could do that, I'd appreciate it.
They're expecting like 500 kids, so you're going to need some.
Yeah. That's a few.
Okay. Deborah, you should think about submitting your honey for judging.
If I have any left, yeah, maybe.
You won our competition locally, so you should think about submitting your honey for the honey judging.
No, I haven't even thought of it. I'll look into it. Thank you.
Of course, then you have to donate the honey that you submit for sampling, because then they auction it off. And that's a big part of the money making for the ABS.
Oh, I see. Okay. I'll look into it. Yeah. Thank you.
There go your 5 extra boxes of honey, Deb.
Right? I'd be honored.
Before we,
We will let Jim know to put that in the newsletter in December.
before we conclude, I just want to ask, did anybody experience anything out of the normal they thought was odd or had questions about as far as their bees? Like, I don't know, bees disappearing, bees acting weird, bees doing, just because I'm curious, not because I have any knowledge about it. I just,
Besides them being nasty when it was smoky, no.
I had a few hives die, or a couple hives to actually die on me in the last month or two. And you wouldn't think that would happen, especially after I spent so much money on feeding them. But what I think, either, just call it unpointable, finger pointable, whatever, maybe, queens were lackluster, succession queens. They don't like him and eventually get rid of him or something like that. But I have a neighbor, I think there's like a utility easement away from the fence where the bees are at. And every summer they bring over the pesticide company with the long hose and the truck and spray these 60-foot, 70-foot elm trees right. I stop the car and I say, just remember there's beehives over here, behind the fence, and they're all friendly, say, we won't point it over that way, just get this way. But I'm just wondering if, sublethal effects are occurring, and if so, maybe I should collect a 300 count bee sample and send it off to the lab. I think it's in Montana, but I have yet to even find out if they can detect pesticide residues in bees, if they have that capability or not. But it'd be a simple Google search, and they have the Western Apiculture Society has videos on YouTube where they one of the videos is where this guy was talking about, and so he's very readily available to anybody who wants to have him maybe not dissect it for spores and stuff, but maybe just do a general collection and analysis, real general, and give you an idea of if and what your bees are going against. And it might be $50 and that's it. I think that he's very reasonable. So it's something I'm really considering. I'm going to be manipulating my hives here pretty soon, and I might, depending on how many have passed away, I'm going to look them up and send them off, I think.
There's I want to say the Honeybee Coalition or something like that. They actually do sampling for bees, and so that might be something to look into also, because they try to get numbers across the country for mites and foul brood and all this other stuff, and they do also check for pesticides and stuff like that. I want to say I think it's the Honeybee Health Coalition, but I'm not 100% sure. So there are a lot of organizations out there that do that. So that might be something for you to look into. Anytime I've experienced any poisoning, I have seen, like, I'll just walk out and it looks like the hive has just puked all the bees out the front. And other than that, I don't know. I'm sure, because all my bees are in town, in neighborhoods, I'm sure that they are experiencing poisonings. But the only time it's ever really bad is when I go out and I'm like, oh no, that hive's dead.
That's what I was been taught too, is that you can tell right away when there's a pesticide die-off.
Can't you also somehow register your hive so that the chemical guys are restricted to only doing their treatments at times like late evenings or early mornings, so you don't get the wind drift of the pesticides?
So there was a deal with the NDA surrounding that, but they went away from that when that night guy tried to take beekeeping away from everybody. They went away from having a voluntary registration that bee companies can look at, but there's nothing binding with it at all. And so I think what it probably ended up being was more of a risk to the beekeeper, because now everybody knows where your bees are, and so vandalism and theft, stuff like that. So and so now I don't think they actually do that anymore, but they are pushing to make everybody register all their bees. So we'll see how that works out for them. We'll find out next year. So.
Yeah, I thought I had heard something about that, but that makes sense of how it's not happening anymore. Thanks.
I'm not sure this is interesting, but we have a neighbor with a Ring camera, and they get a bear on their camera. They got one last night, and several times their garbage cans have been knocked over, and most everybody lives puts their garbage cans in the garage, but this person didn't and got hit a couple times. But we're not we're not far from the Walmart down in South Reno. I mean, it's like, this is an expansion of the bears, or a movement of the bear territory far lower into the flats where I live than in South Reno than they've ever been before, I think. And I don't know what the solution is, but I do know you can report bear. If your bees get hit, you can report it to the Nevada Department of Wildlife and take a picture and send it off to their bear director, and he'll add it to their evidence of human bear interactions, and maybe add a cost to like $1,000 or something. I mean, I wouldn't probably think they're worth that much, but I'd put it down.
I know because of the smoke that there have been a lot of bear sightings. I mean, Randy had mentioned like early in the summer that there was bears in his neighborhood, but over by Pam's, I heard people reporting bears over there on the other side of Plumas golf course in that area. So the bears are definitely coming down, and I think it's just because they don't have enough to eat. So hopefully they'll leave the bees alone. But if not, a fence is your friend. So I know the ones I have down south, I have a fence around. So. And you got to make sure that your fence is far enough away, because the bears are smart. They'll push your beehive over if they can reach it, and knock it over the electric fence so that it shorts out, so they don't get shocked as they're taking on your bees. So. Yeah.
So we're not talking about the same kind of fence that goes around your house, right? We're talking about an electric fence.
Yeah, an electric fence.
What do you think about a nice 6-foot wood fence? I mean, it seems like the behavior in our neighborhood is, well, if it's a garbage can that's out in the middle of the road, sure, I'll go for it. But if it's anywhere behind something, no, I'll just pass it by. Maybe that's.
They'll go right over it. I'm on either Next Door Neighbor or the Ring stuff, and they've shown a bear going over a 6-foot redwood fence. So that's not going to be a deterrent to them. They can climb trees easy. They can hit over a fence like that easy.
I see Steve not wanting to say anything, but he told me a story of a bear flat-footed jumping over his fence, and he has an 8-foot fence in his backyard. So I don't think it'll stop them. I think right now the bees are probably going to be not as big of a risk, because there's so much garbage and fruit and stuff like that that's around, that they're going to go after first, because they don't have to worry about getting stung eating the fruit and going through your garbage. But once there's no other food sources around, they might, if they haven't gone into hibernation, they might be a little more inclined to go after bees. So
Yeah, I've had a bear eat my super off 2 years ago, and we got a guard dog that barks all night. It's some kind of like shepherd's dog. And I bought these little sirens on Amazon for $20. They are super powered, red. They're called, just Google like bear deterrent sirens. And when a bear approaches them, you can set it up to just blinking red light or making a loud siren noise, and it also deters them because they're scared of the sound. But I guess they're just scared of our dog, so I have both. So
has that worked well for you?
that works well. So I've had maybe the same bear come back every year since, because they make a kind of food map and come back and want to feed again. And they also got a flock of my chickens that same fall. And I know that he came back because he just leaves his droppings, but our dog is chasing it away. So I've not had any losses since then.
One of the funny posts that was on the next door or whatever was a bear went up to the front door of a house and they had one of those motion censored Halloween things that went off when he came. You should have seen it hightail the other direction. It was funnier than heck. So I could imagine a siren would be even worse than a Halloween decoration.
There you go. Go out and the Halloween spirit starring, get yourself a motion activated jumping spider or something.
The only concern I would have with the siren and the red flashing light is, I mean, it sounds like an ideal and inexpensive, part of the solution before I go and spend $1,000 on an electric fence. But I was concerned that what if a coyote goes in front of it or a dog, and then I get up all riled up in the middle of the night. I'm not going to go out there without a pitchfork or a gun. That sort of thing is kind of tough to, because it's going to go off, right? At least once or twice during the winter, for something. But
Yes, it goes off. It goes
maybe
off.
you just got to be prepared. You got to think ahead what you're going to do when it goes off. Maybe have a pre in place pitchfork or just have a light, in a certain spot that you can just wake up and go and keep yourself safe, and at the same time, be able to try to see if you can minimize the damage to your hives. But so are you saying they have a range, maybe a 10-20 foot range, these little sirens? They're like,
Yeah, something like that. And of course, it doesn't distinguish between a bear or coyote or any other animal. So I don't go out when it goes off. I have my dog out there. Sometimes the dog even puts it off. But I've had a bear here also in late summer that ran away from the siren. So, and then you just run outside with a pot and a spoon and make a lot of noise. And
okay.
yeah.
Fences also, I know that if you get a solar one, because you don't have power near it or whatnot, can be fairly expensive. But you can buy the chargers. They aren't terribly expensive. You just want to make sure it's a 1 joule if you do. And then I think if you spent $1,000 for it, you'd have quite the system. Randy knows a lot about these, though.
Yeah, I think the 50-foot netting that you can buy, and Better Bee has it now, but Ken Cove is the maker. I think they run about $180, and then you got to get your power source. And if you run off a 110, if you got that supply, you're looking at probably $100 for a 1 joule, which isn't bad. So under $300, you could do it, and they work because the bears are through here every night. And he leaves his little trail right beside the places, but knock on wood, I'm not having any damage. I got broken fences.
So you need to have it on all sides. You can't rely on a 6-foot wood fence on one side and the electric fence on 3 sides. It won't work because they'll just go over the wood fence, right? Or
They could, yes.
if they can find a way, they'll find it, basically.
They're pretty smart. Yeah. But the netting goes all the way around and circles your hive. So I have a 50-foot one and it goes around 6 hives. Yeah.
If you forget your coffee, you can always go out and shock yourself with that 1 joule. That will definitely.
Oh boy.
Okay, so did we cover everything for winter? Okay, so Mark, do we have anything else to say?
I think that is everything.
Okay, well, I hate to say it, but see you next year, and we'll send out a newsletter.
Sounds
you.
good.
Emo,
Bye, good
Emu,
luck.
thanks for stepping up.
Yeah, thank you.